Herc's Mercs, Bloody But Unbowed, Chapter 11. The target of the operation was a small, run-down farmhouse standing in the middle of a field overgrown with weeds. The nearest neighbors were at least 2 miles away, and that suited Daryl Greer just fine. It meant there was less of a chance of innocents getting hurt by accident, and the strike team could get in and out without being spotted. That was important. Being caught or killed would lead to problems, not just for the team, but for Herc and for Lawson and Greer. His night vision goggles turned the world into a monochrome of green. Nothing appeared to be moving, so Daryl gave the hand sign for his small group to advance. Daryl was in charge since he had the most experience in this kind of operation, but the 2 demolitions guys, Abel and Stack, were the ones who would actually handle the bomb. In addition, Herc had sent along 2 others from the Mercs, Brian Finnegan, who had demolitions expertise of his own and was also an EMT, and Joe Morrissey, who spoke at least 8 different languages. They crept up slowly, alert for any signs of activity. 2 cars were parked close to the building, along with a white-paneled truck. Daryl grimaced. It looked like the Eastern Light might have already arrived for the exchange. That meant things were likely to get dicey. They'd almost made it to the house when a figure came around one corner of the building. The man was carrying a rifle, but before he even spotted them, Joe Morrissey was on him, putting a hand over the man's mouth and drawing the blade of a wickedly sharp knife across his throat. The guard struggled for a few moments, but his flailing quickly grew weaker, then ceased altogether. 1 down, an unknown number still to go. Morrissey pulled the body off into the weeds, then returned. Daryl made a circling gesture with one hand and watched as Morrissey and Finn nodded and slipped away, circling the house to look for any other guards. Daryl heard the faint sounds of another struggle. Then Finn and Morrissey reappeared, giving him a thumbs up. Finn made another gesture, confirming there was a back door on the other side of the house. Daryl nodded, then started forward again. The front porch was a rickety-looking affair, and Daryl scowled, knowing they couldn't mount it without making noise. It was possible the people inside would think it was just their own guards, but he couldn't take that chance. They had the element of surprise on their side, and he didn't want to lose it. They were close enough now to hear the murmur of voices from inside, coming from the front room, but curtains obscured the windows, making it impossible to see how many men there were. Daryl moved closer to Finn and spoke quietly. "Any better in the back?" Finn shrugged. "Set of 3 steps, rusted iron, no lights." Daryl frowned. He didn't want to split the attack. No doubt bullets were going to fly no matter what, but he didn't want to risk any of them falling to friendly fire in the heat of the moment. They all had body armor on, of course, but that would only protect so much. Then he smiled as a plan formulated in his mind. It wasn't a pleasant smile. He stepped back from the house, beckoning the others to follow, and gave a set of low-voiced instructions. All the men were experienced enough to see what he was doing, and no one raised any questions. "Just be sure not to shoot the fucking bomb when we go in," he said softly. "Okay, Abel, go." Abel left the group and moved around to the back of the house. Daryl had decided on a distraction, something that would turn the terrorists' attention away from the main attack. Within a minute, Abel returned, giving a thumbs up, and they moved towards the house. Raising 3 fingers, Abel made a countdown. When he lowered his last finger, Abel pressed a button, and the flashbang he'd set at the back door went off. An explosion of light and sound came from the rear of the house, but Daryl was already mounting the porch in a single stride and aiming a combat boot-shod foot at the door. Wood splintered and cracked, and the door flew open. Daryl rushed in, gun raised, identifying targets by instinct. All of them were looking towards the rear of the house, several of them with their hands over their ears in reaction to the flashbang. There were 8 men in the room, and Daryl got off a kill shot at 2 of them before they even realized what was happening. The rest of Daryl's team was right behind him, but by now the quicker-witted of their opponents, or at least those who already had their guns in their hands, were able to fight back. Daryl dodged, but there wasn't very far to go in the confines of the room. He took out another target, and he saw other men falling before the hail of bullets. One man managed to jump behind a sofa, and he fired blindly over the top, apparently just hoping to get a lucky hit. Daryl heard Stack swear, but then it was over. The bodies of 7 men lay strewn about the room like broken dolls. "I surrender! I surrender!" the man behind the sofa shouted, and he slid the gun away from him across the floor. "Get him," Daryl told Morrissey, moving towards the table. There was a small stack of bags on it, and a scale where a single gold nugget the size of a grape rested. The payment was here, but Daryl saw no sign of the bomb. "Finn, Abel, check the back room," Daryl said, then turned to Morrissey. "Ask him where the bomb is." Morrissey started to question the cowering prisoner, who looked as though he was ready to faint. He didn't seem to be one of the Eastern Light terrorists, since Daryl couldn't imagine them accepting someone who seemed ready to faint at the sight of the dead bodies. But even if he was one of the men who was selling the bomb, that made him no less guilty in Daryl's eyes. The noise of an engine starting came from outside, and Daryl was moving before he'd even realized what he was going to do. Driven by pure instinct, he ran from the house, eyes drawn to the white-paneled truck. It all crystallized for him in that moment as he bolted in the direction of the truck. The bomb had been loaded while the terrorists haggled over the payment. Someone must have run out the back of the house during the firefight, or else he'd already been inside the truck guarding the bomb. Either way, it looked as though the bomb was about to slip through Daryl's grasp. He wasn't going to allow it. The man behind the wheel didn't seem familiar with the truck, and gears clashed and whined as he tried to get it in motion. Daryl was 20 feet away when the truck suddenly lurched forward. The driver gunned the engine and turned the wheel, sending the gravel of the drive flying and flinging a cloud of dust into the air. Gears crashed again, but now the driver was heading away, more interested in escaping than in trying to mow Daryl down. Daryl made a split-second decision. He threw down his rifle and took off towards the truck, running hell-bent for all he was worth, cursing silently as he gained on it. The truck was lurching, the engine whining as the driver pressed the accelerator, but he was in too low a gear. Then the driver shifted, and the truck began to accelerate again. Gathering himself, Daryl jumped for the step on the truck's rear bumper. He managed to grab the handle of the rear door, then pulled himself up while he was standing on the back of the truck. "Now what?" he muttered, glancing around the near side toward the driver's door. He didn't know if the driver realized he had a parasite, but it really didn't matter. There was a ladder leading up to the top of the truck, and Daryl knew he had only one option. He started up the ladder. The driver was still making his way down the rutted drive, bouncing the truck into what felt like every pothole in existence. When Daryl reached the top of the truck, he kept down on his belly, not wanting to get bounced or thrown off by any sharp movement. He low-crawled forward until he reached the front edge of the truck, then peered down onto the roof of the cab. Trying to shoot the driver through the roof seemed too risky. Apparently the man didn't know Daryl was above him, or he'd no doubt have been slewing the truck, trying to throw Daryl off. The element of surprise was once again his best weapon, so he moved until he was sitting on the edge of the cargo compartment, legs dangling above the cab. Then he slowly, carefully lowered himself down, offering a silent prayer that the metal didn't flex loudly below his feet and give his presence away. His luck held, although he had a scary moment when the driver turned the truck onto a main road. Daryl held the edge of the cargo compartment in a death grip and waited until the truck had fully gained the smoother road before beginning to move again. He slowly stretched out from side to side on the roof of the cab, then reached for the base of his spine where his pistol was holstered. The windows of the truck were closed, and he'd probably be able to get off only a single shot, so he had to make it count. If he missed, the driver would do everything he could to throw Daryl off, and if that happened, they'd lose the nuke and any hope of finding it before it was used. An image of Emerson rose up in his mind, and Daryl closed his eyes. If he died, he'd never see Emerson again, and the thought sent an ache through him. For the first time, he thought maybe the thrill of the job wasn't worth it. Not when he had someone waiting for him back home, someone who could give him just as much of a thrill. But he didn't have time to waste on what-ifs or regrets, not when he still had a job to do. He drew in a deep breath, focusing once again on the task at hand. 1, 2, 3. He counted softly, then leaned down, looking at the driver through the truck window. The man's head whipped around toward him, but before he could do more than open his mouth in a cry of surprise, Daryl aimed his gun and fired. The effect was instantaneous. Glass shattered and tires whined as the truck veered wildly toward the right side of the road. There was no oncoming traffic, not at 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere, but there was something almost as bad. Daryl lifted his head just in time to see the truck barreling towards the yawning black chasm of a ditch on the side of the road, and he had no time to brace himself or even try to grab anything before the nose of the truck plunged downward and Daryl found himself flying through the air. Something hard impacted his right side, and a burst of searing pain made him gasp. Then he hit the ground. His arm broke, the bone shattering with an almost explosive crack. His head hit the ground and everything went gray and fuzzy. It could have been minutes or hours before Daryl was again aware of his surroundings. Finn was kneeling beside him, fingers pressed to his neck as he took Daryl's pulse. "You sure are one tough son of a bitch, D-Day." "Bomb?" Daryl asked. He couldn't focus clearly on Finn's face. "In the truck, as you surmised," Finn replied. He fiddled with something Daryl couldn't see before Daryl felt the sting of a needle in his arm. "The driver's dead, and we got the guy who built the bomb. Abel and Stack are freaking out because the damn thing is leaking radiation all over the place. Not from the accident. The guy who built it just sucks." "What about cleanup?" Daryl demanded. "Don't worry, boss man. Second team is on its way." Finn shook his head. "You're fucking insane. You know that? Jumping on the truck, then shooting the driver? But it worked. You're going to have some nasty scars, and I'm glad I don't have to nurse you. But you'll live. Even if you do owe me now for twice patching up your miserable ass." "Good," Daryl sighed. Whatever Finn had given him was easing the pain. He'd completed his mission, and he would be going home. Home to Emerson. Daryl was smiling as darkness claimed him at last.